in my 2012 book, Evolution's Purpose, I kind of examined what the science of evolution has revealed and recognized that it's kind of properly interpreted as spiritual teaching in its own right. Right. And that it's not a substitute for other kinds of spiritual teachings. It's more of a supplement. It can challenge and support other kinds of, the various lineages of spirituality that have developed in the world, many of which are very important, very beautiful, which will continue to evolve, way beyond traditionalism. But what science has revealed is so staggering and so amazing and beautiful that properly interpreted, it should be recognized as a kind of spiritual truth that can edify humanity. And so one of these truths that relates to this idea of the dialectic and its subset of polarity theory is the idea that regardless of what or if there was any kind of physical existence of the universe before the Big Bang, what physics have revealed is that there's something major happened 13.8 billion years ago, right? There was a singularity, and we can trace the lines of time and space back to that. So time and space and matter and energy, at least in our universe, has a distinct and dramatic beginning. And this is the beginning of evolution, right? We start with the debris of the Big Bang, just hydrogen gas is basically all that's left. And then gradually, something more keeps coming from something less. And we see the major domains, like as I mentioned, cosmological, biological, and cultural evolution. But these are all linked back to this original Big Bang because our bodies themselves embody the structure of emergence, right? So the main ingredient in the human body is water, and the main ingredient of water is hydrogen atoms. So in the same way that hydrogen atoms were the first thing to emerge in the universe, they're the foundation of this structure of emergence that our bodies embody, right? That is, we embody all the entire, most of the periodic table, of elements in our bodies. We embody most of the accomplishments of the biological tree of life. And now in this cultural consciousness we're using to have this conversation, we embody most of the developments in human history that have led to our ability to have this kind of conversation. So each human is a microcosmic expression of the entire structure of evolutionary emergence. That by itself is a staggering spiritual teaching. But where it begins to lead is that we live in this finite universe of time and space, but we have spiritual experiences. And when we do, especially the most intense kinds of spiritual experiences, it's almost like the finite universe is becoming thin, and that there's something beyond it, something that is the center and the circumference. I refer to it as many ways, but the infinite, at least in kind of pseudoscientific terms, is a way of talking about it. So we have the finite and the infinite. The infinite, is always existed, but within this infinite universe, this bubble of finite time and space appear, right? So regardless of what the relationship is between the finite and the infinite, I think that many spiritual traditions and also many, scientific cosmologists are willing to say that the finite and the infinite is at least part of the way we can understand the universe. And so if we understand these domains, ontologically, or in terms of their being, we can begin to imagine that the universe itself, the giant big picture, the totality, right? The totality exists necessarily. So what is that totality? Well, our human minds don't have an ability to get our arms around it, in any kind of comprehensive way. But at this point in history, we might be able to begin to say that at least one way of thinking about the totality is infinite and finite. And if we have infinite and finite as at least a starting point, or as a premise, which we'll get smarter about, but at least as a placeholder for what we're trying to understand, we can begin to see that, look, there's that polarity, part and whole. That the infinite, of course, is a whole, and the universe of time and space became a part of that larger whole 13.8 billion years ago. And so if you think about the thesis as the infinite and time and space as the antithesis, the thesis is the infinite. The finite is the antithesis. So the thesis and the antithesis. And as those interact, as evolution occurs within the finite, and humans like us emerge, and probably similar creatures throughout the universe, who can begin to sense that there's a greater purpose, at least we have a purpose, right? Whether there's a purpose of evolution, there's certainly purpose in evolution because we all have it and use it to get up in the morning. So the infinite and the finite, that's the big picture. And so it would be understandable if that same gigantic structure was refracted throughout the universe in a kind of a self-similar fractal way. So that every instance of development is, in a sense, a model of this larger interaction of the infinite and the finite. So if the infinite is the thesis and the finite is the antithesis, then evolution itself is a synthesis. Evolution is reintegrating the finite and the infinite, step by step, life by life, human spiritual experience by spiritual experience. And so when we have a spiritual experience, we experience the presence of the infinite, at least fleetingly and momentarily, as we, as much as our human capacity can enact. And it's that very experience of the infinite, spiritual experience itself, especially when we understand spiritual experience to include experiences of the beautiful, the true, and the good, right? The most intrinsic values, then that's what raises consciousness. This is the final chapter of my 2015 book, Presence of the Infinite, is that if we begin to understand spiritual experience as the thing which throughout history has served to help people emerge into new kinds of consciousness, right? It's the new truth, the new beauty, and the new goodness of these emerging kinds of culture that attract people to it, like a higher octave of the beautiful, the true, and the good. So again, this is all very abstract and cosmic, but when I see this pattern of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, and when I see it expressed in polarities and the way the development is integration or synthesis, then I can begin to appreciate how these are tiny little microcosmic models of the large big picture, right? The elegance of the fractal nature of the universe and how it develops fractally in that way. It's mind blowing. It sort of takes your breath away, it gives you a sense of cosmic vertigo. But nevertheless, I think it's extremely powerful because it begins to point to some of the depths and beauty of evolution understood as a spiritual teaching.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you shared more about this. I'm trying to soak all of it in. The thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, and connecting that to the finite, the infinite, and evolution